Hey guys, Rob Skiba here. So I get a lot of emails, and I definitely don't have time to respond to the vast majority of them, but I really do make an effort to try to at least read them, especially if they're not too long. And the same goes for Facebook messages. But um, well, I just recently took another turn down an interesting passageway in the rabbit hole. It started with a friend on Facebook sending me this picture of an Irish megalithic rock art symbol for the firmament. I know there are a number of people in the flat earth movement who are adamantly opposed to the dome. Frankly, I think they have to ignore way too much textual and visual depictions from the ancient world, of course, also backed by good modern scholarship recognizing these things in order to maintain their view, but whatever. To each their own, right? But for me to be an honest researcher, I've got to be willing to look at the evidence, and it seems everywhere I turn, I see someone in the ancient world either writing about the firmament or depicting it, usually as a dome, which of course would be the most logical shape to place over the biblical circle of the earth. So, yeah, I believe that if we are on a circular, flat-ish plane set on pillars under a firmament, that it is in fact a dome. Now, how high the dome goes or how far out it extends to the edges, that's anybody's guess right now. Unless, of course, we look at the interesting evidence surrounding Antarctica and the various missions that Admiral Byrd went on down there and others. Of course, we have Operation Deep Freeze. That's when a lot of people are down there in Antarctica. And then something happens, and everybody sort of pulls out of there. And then they sign this Antarctic Treaty. And very shortly thereafter, NASA's formed, just getting started right around the 1958 time frame or so. And then right away, you've got the United States and Russia. All of a sudden, they start blowing off high-altitude nukes, and the U.S. calls it Operation Fishbowl, which was part of the larger Project Dominic. And I've told you in previous broadcasts, I believe I talked about it in the Sending Thor to Smash the Firmament video, that I had learned that Dominic, the name Dominic, means of the Lord. So Operation Fishbowl being part of the larger Project Dominic, literally would be translated as Fishbowl of the Lord. So then, okay, after leaving Antarctica and shooting nuclear missiles up into the fishbowl of the Lord, we find ourselves in the space race. Now, I'm going to pull something up here. This is part of my Testing the Globe blog series under the title of Gearing Up for Apollo, and I haven't been able to work on this in months. It's kind of where I left off, and I didn't publish this one yet, so I'll just kind of look at it here in Dreamweaver. This is it's going to be part 4, The Beast Goes South, and I've still got quite a bit to work on that one, though. But let me just skip down a little bit here to right about here. Okay. This is where things start to get a little crazy. Now, prior to this, I'm showing a timeline and everything, and basically saying what I just said. Admiral Byrd dies in 1957. Sputnik is launched. The United States completes 6 high-altitude nuclear tests in 1958. Kennedy makes his announcement about us going to the moon in 1961. Then in 1962, more high-altitude tests were performed, and they called it Operation Fishbowl. Seriously? If they're trying to keep us from looking at things as a conspiracy, they really should have tried different names. And of course, when I wrote this was before I knew what Dominic meant, so I'll have to add that to this blog. But it's as if they are literally baiting us to think the way I'm now thinking. I mean, just look at the mission names and expedition titles and the chronology we have listed so far. It's crazy. Meanwhile, the Antarctic expeditions continued. I want to focus on this one right here, 1955 and 1957. The first Soviet Antarctic expedition led by Mikhail Somov. The year of 1957 to 1958, from June 57 to December 58, was known as the International Geophysical Year. which came out of an international resolution established in 1954, the desire of which was for a nation to launch a satellite into space in order to observe the Earth and take other space-based scientific observations. The first nation to accomplish this goal would win a prize, hence the space race began. The winner would thus be recognized as the most technologically advanced. Obviously, the two most likely candidates to even make a reasonable attempt at this goal were the United States and the Soviet Union. On October 4th, 1957, Sputnik was launched, and Russia was the first to achieve the goal of putting an artificial satellite up into space. This, of course, terrified the United States. On November 3rd, 1957, a second Sputnik satellite was sent up. This one was larger and heavier than the first one, and it also contained a dog, which became the first living creature to be sent into orbit. This heavier payload thus proved the Soviets' ability to place something large, such as, a nuclear warhead, atop a rocket and send it high into the atmosphere, and presumably far across the world to hit us. On December 6, 1957, the United States attempted to launch a Vanguard rocket into space. It blew up on the launch pad. Another launch was quickly prepared, this time with the Explorer satellite, which was a radiation detection probe developed by Dr. James Van Allen. It would be put atop von Braun's Juno rocket, which launched on January 31st, 1958. America thus finally entered the space race, and the Van Allen radiation belt was soon discovered. NASA was formed on October 1st, 1958. The Vanguard 1 satellite was also successfully launched, but the United States was still quite far behind in the space race. Then President John F. Kennedy took the Oval Office, and things were about to change in radical ways. While the United States was setting its sights on beating the Russians in space, trips to Antarctica continued, most notably by the Soviets. We see from 1956 to 1958 we have a second Soviet Antarctic expedition. Then we have from 1957 to 1959 the third Soviet Antarctic expedition, from 58 to 60 the fourth, from 59 to 51 the fifth, and from 1960 to 1962 the sixth. And I made it to be continued here because I was going to continue it in the fifth installment in the Gearing Up for Apollo series. But the point is, we were racing for space, and then we beat the Soviets, and so what? The Soviets just gave up? They said, no need to do anything else. Okay, so we're done. Well, no. They went ahead and took off for Antarctica and continued to do more and more missions down there, while we started doing the whole facade of the Apollo program. Yes, I am now fully convinced that we did not go to the moon, and if you're not on that page yet, well, you've got some homework to do. A funny thing happened to the moon is probably a good place to start. Astronauts Gone Wild. There's lots of different videos out there debunking the Apollo program. But even if you don't believe all those conspiracy videos that are out there, NASA's doing a pretty good job of debunking themselves. Yeah, they discovered the Van Allen belt and supposedly sent astronauts through the thing 12 times, through 6 round trips. But yet, they can't figure out the radiation problem with the Orion project here in the 21st century with all our modern technology.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation.
What?
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation.
One more time.
An area of dangerous radiation.
Oh. What's wrong with that radiation?
Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back.
That doesn't sound good.
Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
What? We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space? I thought this problem was solved over 40 years ago when he sent a bunch of people in jumpsuits and tin cans through it there and back a half dozen times. But I forgot. The Apollo guys, they were clueless regarding the radiation belt. That it didn't affect them.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt, and if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works. You study to see what the threats are, the environment is, and then you say, how thick do I have to make the metal on the spacecraft so that going through this kind of radiation or these kind of meteoroids, it won't get hurt. And then we build it that way.
I help manage the Orion Crew and Service Module office. We're responsible for developing the crew capsule, which is where the crew lives and works when they're in space, and the service module, which is what provides the power and the fuel and the consumables then that is plumbed over to the crew module. So right now I focus a lot of my time on the development of the life support system for the Orion Crew module. Space puts us in a different environment. When we're here on Earth, we don't realize every day we're protected by the environment around us. Our bodies are at a certain pressure, we're protected by the natural radiation shield of the Earth. And when we go out into space and we don't have that natural protection, then the engineering and the spacecraft have to provide that protection for us. We don't have the ultimate answer for radiation on Orion. We're still working on that. If we were to build Orion out of the materials we need and the sole job was to protect for the radiation environment, the vehicle would really be too heavy. So we have to balance the weight of the materials that we put on the spacecraft with how much protection it's providing the crew. So we're really looking at it from an operational perspective. If we understand a radiation event has happened, the crew will actually take shelter in the aft bay of the vehicle, which is kind of down in the back end. And we'll use some of the stowage things that are around them in that back end to kind of protect them from the radiation. We have found over the years that water is a really great radiation absorbing material. So we could do things like water that's already there in the water bags for drinking and things like that. That water could be used to shield them. As well as we've had some concepts like a water-filled vest that they could put on should they know there's an event and need to be protected.
We don't have a clue when it comes to like how to protect them from like radiation. So we're gonna just like put them up there in like water suits. Yeah, we like water suits, and like if we put water all around them, so the radiation could go like into the water, and then they could drink it, and it could be like a Fantastic Four. Everybody they'll come back and be mutants when they get back. But we just got some ideas, Yeah. But don't worry about it. Yeah, I know there are refugees everywhere, and like people are starving and stuff, and like we have homeless all over the place. But if we spend like a few $1 trillion, I think we should be able to figure out how to make water suits for the astronauts in space, and then maybe it'll work out like it did for the guys in Apollo.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
We went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
Didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
Yeah, if you pretend that it's not really there, then you can just go right through it. So apparently you had this magic window of time, because now Orion's still very much concerned about it. We've got to solve this challenge before we can put people through it. And yet even before Mercury and Gemini, they were very concerned about it and trying to figure out how to solve the problem, as evidenced in this Smithsonian.com article. News of the hot band of peril immediately cast doubt on whether Laika, the Russian dog, would have been able to survive for a week in space aboard Sputnik 2, as the Soviets claimed in November of 1957. The Soviets said that after 6 days, the dog's oxygen ran out and he was euthanized with poisoned food. It was later learned that Leica, the first live animal to be launched into space, died just hours after the launch from overheating and stress when a malfunction in the capsule caused the temperature to rise. What Van Allen had discovered were the bands of high-energy particles that were held in place by strong magnetic fields and soon known as the Van Allen belts. A year later, he appeared on the cover of Time magazine as he opened an entirely new field of research, magnetospheric physics, and catapulted the United States into the race to space with the Soviet Union. On the same day, Van Allen held his press conference in May 1958. He agreed to cooperate with the United States military on a top-secret project. The plan? To send atomic bombs into space in an attempt to blow up the Van Allen belts, or to at least disrupt them with a massive blast of nuclear energy. Okay, guys, read up on this stuff. All right, this is Smithsonian.com. Check that out. There's another good article on NPR. You can look up a very scary light show, exploding H-bombs in space, where they talk about this, and they got a video here showing footage of Operation Fishbowl, which is a very interesting title for after they find something in Antarctica, which the flat earthers would say is the outer rim of the circle of the Earth, and everybody pulls out. All of a sudden, NASA's created, and right after that, they start shooting up rockets into space with nuclear warheads on them, and this is what you start seeing with Operation Fishbowl. Operation Fishbowl. Really? I mean, it looks like they found something in Antarctica and they said, oh, what is this? Wonder how high it is. How high does this thing go? And they start blowing off nuclear bombs in the atmosphere. Now, were they doing that because they were testing the firmament? Were they trying to blast through the firmament? Or is it about the Van Allen belt with the radiation? Is that the problem? I don't know. This article goes on to describe, again, the Van Allen energy belts and what they came to understand about them, and discover it, then blow it up. The plan was to send rockets hundreds of miles up higher than the Earth's atmosphere and then detonate nuclear weapons to see, A, if a bomb's radiation would make it harder to see what was up there, like incoming Russian missiles, B, if an explosion would do any damage to objects nearby, C, if the Van Allen belts would move a blast down the bands to an earthly target, Moscow, for example, and most peculiar, D, if a man-made explosion might alter the natural shape of the belts. The scientific basis for these proposals is not clear. Fleming is trying to figure out if Van Allen had any theoretical reason to suppose the military could use the Van Allen belts to attack a hostile nation. He supposes that at the height of the Cold War, the most pressing argument for a military experiment was, if we don't do it, the Russians will. And indeed, the Russians did test atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs in space. No big surprise, they were also down there in Antarctica prior. And oh, by the way, while we supposedly got ahead of them and started to beat them in the alleged space race, you know, we're led to believe they just, we lost and they gave up. No, they sent something like 40 missions down to Antarctica while we were playing around with the so-called Apollo space program. So something's going on here, and these psychopaths, you know, they look up there, they see something, oh, that looks cool, let's blow it up. Oh, we don't really think it's important, even though they have admitted that they know it's there for our protection. Why do we put our fate into the hands of monkey men? These people think they came from monkeys, for crying out loud, and they hold within their grasp technology that could make life for us here on Earth very bad when they do things like they're attempting to do at CERN, to rip holes in the fabric of time and space and recreate what they think is the Big Bang, opening up portals to interdimensional, realms. And now keep in mind, these monkey men think that the whole universe got here when a microscopic dot exploded. So what are they doing? They're slamming microscopic dots together, trying to recreate the Big Bang. I don't really think it takes a very high IQ to think that through. Wait a minute. You think we got here from a microscopic dot exploding, and now you're slamming microscopic dots together, trying to explode them and recreate the Big Bang. Hello? Guys, maybe there's a reason why they put the Hindu god Shiva, the god of destruction, dancing in a portal outside their front freaking door. Bunch of lunatics. And meanwhile, elsewhere, a bunch of other lunatic psychopaths are thinking they can poke holes or blow up the Van Allen belt, the very thing that's up there, put there for our protection. People out there thinking I'm crazy.
Also of note, we have all these satellites up there supposedly orbiting the Earth, providing us with GPS, right? GPS coverage. That's what they say. That's what people all believe. I'm now convinced that GPS is all completely ground-based, but regardless, we supposedly have all these thousands of satellites up there, and yet even NASA, they can't even track their own stuff over the so-called Southern Hemisphere.
As the spacecraft and the upper stage begin their first lap around Earth, Mission Control in Houston is monitoring the progress of the flight. Orion's over 100 miles up and going about 17,000 miles per hour. Just as it passes over the Indian Ocean, we lose communication. This is expected. The communications link we have through satellites to Orion is momentarily lost, but Orion continues to receive and process data. Its computers can handle 480 million instructions per second.
Seriously? NASA can't even track their own ships there? Really? I mean, you would think if they have the ability to put up all these satellites up there, and there's all these, global positioning systems, there's all this stuff that supposedly led to the creation of Google Earth and everything from space, right? That surely they would have the ability to keep track of their spaceship when it goes over the Indian Ocean. Yeah. Well, all of this is intriguing enough, and entire videos have been made and certainly could be made concerning this stuff, but last Thursday, February 18th, something else was dropped on me in an email. I was told to check out a few links, and I did, and wow, all I could say is this is some crazy weird stuff. So, I mean, this is like, maybe I need to create a whole section on my website called the Flat Earth X-Files or something, or, weird stuff, because this one definitely, from a flat earther perspective, is quite peculiar, let's just say. And I'll also say that it is interesting to me that Flat Earth comes out right about the same time as The Principle comes out. Now, those guys are not in any way associated with Flat Earth. They don't believe in Flat Earth. And yet, they put out this documentary. They were led to do all the research and do all the interviews and do all the editing and post-production and everything to create this video that comes out that demolishes the Copernican heliocentric model. I mean, just obliterates it. At right about the same time that the whole issue of the Flat Earth starts becoming viral. I don't know. I don't know what to make of all this. It's just the timing of it seems rather interesting. Now, I know people out there saying it's a psyop and all that. Maybe there is some psyop stuff going on. I don't know. I know from my perspective, I'm not on anybody's payroll. I'm not part of any psyop. I'm just a dude trying to figure what this rock is that I'm standing on, and finding a lot of intriguing and interesting, weird, strange pieces of information that right now I don't know what to do with it except to continue to explore. So this one, though, what I'm about to show you, this may be time to go ahead and get your tin foil out and make yourself a little hat, because let's take a walk on the wild side here. Check this out. This is a website called whatdoesitmean.com, and I'm looking at index /index 7381.htm, and the article I'm about to read is from somebody named, I guess, Sister Maria Teresa. She's the 73rd Sorcha Fa'al of the Sorcha Fa'al order. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right. I don't know what any of that means. But what caught my attention was, first I get this megalithic rock art image of the firmament, okay, from the Irish, right? And then I see that this person is born in Dublin, Ireland. So I got the firmament thing, I believe it was the night before I got this email to check this out, and I looked up to see who the author of the article I'm about to read was, and I see that it's this person from Ireland. I'm going, well, that's just weird. The coincidence of getting that rock art image of the firmament the night before and then looking at this just seemed rather odd to me. But anyway, check this out. So she wrote an article. It's at whatdoesitmean.com /index 1955.htm. I'll put all these links in the description below, so you can check it out for yourself. Now, this article was written on December 6, 2015. Russia begins transport of Saudi Arabia's mysterious Ark of Gabriel to Antarctica by Sorcha Faal. Okay, a mind-boggling report circulating in the Kremlin today, prepared by the Ministry of Defense, states that the sudden launching yesterday by aerospace forces of 2 satellites are for the protection of the Federation Naval Research Vessel Admiral Vladimirsky, which has just departed the Saudi Arabian port of Jabba after taking on board a mysterious object described as the Ark of Gabriel, whose importance is deemed so vital that President Putin has further ordered naval warships, guided missile cruiser Varyag, and Sovremeny-class destroyer Bistri, I apologize if I'm butchering these words, Boris Chilikin-class fleet oiler Boris Butoma, and the powerful salvage tug Latau, that upon the ending of their current mission in India, they are to rendezvous with the Admiral Vladimirsky in the Southern Ocean, providing it protection as it sails to Antarctica. Now, I guess this is supposedly a picture of this fleet of ships. According to this report, the unprecedented mission being undertaken by the Admiral Vladimirsky research vessel began on 6 November when it departed from Kronstadt on the Federation's first Antarctic expedition in 30 years, and described by the Ministry of Defense as having such critical military-religious significance. Its cargo includes capsules with Russian soil, which will be placed in the areas of military glory and burial sites of Russian sailors at selected ports of call. To what spurred this astonishing mission, this report explains, was the contacting of 25 September of His Holiness Patriarch Kirill of Moscow by representatives of the custodian of the 2 holy mosques in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, regarding a mysterious ancient device weapon discovered under the Masjid al-Haram Mosque, again, I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, the Grand Mosque, during what has turned into a very controversial construction project. And this is a picture, I guess, of this construction project taking place there at the Grand Mosque in Mecca. Gravely raising the concerns of the Grand Mosque emissaries, this report continues, was when this mysterious device weapon was discovered on 12 September by a 15-man tunnel-digging crew, and who in their attempting to remove it were instantly killed by a massive plasma emission so powerful it ejected from the ground, toppling a construction crane, killing at least another 107 people. Catastrophically worse, this report notes, was that barely a fortnight after the first attempt to remove this mysterious device weapon was made, on 12 September, another attempt was made on 24 September, which killed over 4,000 due to another massive plasma emission, which put tens of thousands in panic, but which Saudi officials then blamed on a stampede. Here's apparently a picture of this plasma emission. Kind of wild. I guess this represents the aftermath of that. After the catastrophic death toll involved with the Saudis' second attempt to remove this mysterious device weapon, this report says His Holiness Patriarch Kirill was then contacted by the Grand Mosque emissaries in regards to one of the oldest Islamic manuscripts possessed by the Russian Orthodox Church that was saved from the Roman Catholic Crusaders in 1204 when they sacked the Church of Holy Wisdom, now known as Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, present-day Istanbul, Turkey, titled Gabriel's Instructions to Muhammad. Important to note, this report explains, and virtually unknown in the West, were that the Roman Catholic Crusades, and like they mirror today, were not only against the peoples of Islamic faith, but also against those having Russian Orthodox faith too, and why during these crusades the Russian Orthodox Church not only protected their religious libraries from being destroyed, but also those belonging to Muslims. As to the contents of this ancient Islamic manuscript, Gabriel's Instructions to Mankind, this report briefly notes it centers around a group of instructions given to Muhammad by the angel Gabriel in a cave called Hira, located on the mountain called Jabal an-Nuar near Mecca, wherein this heavenly being entrusted into Muhammad's care a box or ark of immense power. He was forbidden to use it as it belonged to God only, and was instead to be buried in a shrine at the place of worship the angels used before the creation of man, until its future uncovering in the days of Yom al-Qiyamah or Qiyamah, which means literally day of the resurrection. Though this Ministry of Defense report mentions virtually nothing about the conversations being held between His Holiness Patriarch Kirill and the emissaries of the Grand Mosque in regards to this mysterious weapon device, it does stunningly acknowledge that when President Putin was first informed about the grave situation on 27 September, he not only immediately ordered the mission to Antarctica for the Admiral Vladimirsky research vessel, he also further ordered 3 days later, on 30 September, aerospace forces to begin bombing Islamic State terrorists and targets in Syria. As to what this mysterious weapon device actually is, we are not allowed to report on due to the strictures. I don't know if that's supposed to be strictures or restrictions or something we have to abide by in being allowed to publish even the merest glimpses of what happens behind Kremlin walls we are currently permitted to do. This also pertains to why Russia is helping Saudi Arabia move it to Antarctica. But with both of these nations soon to be at war with the fascist governments of the West, one need only watch the following video, or click here, of some of Russia's top military officers explaining what they know of Antarctica and its past to figure out for oneself how critical indeed these times are that we are living in. Okay, so yeah, that's there's some X-Files for you. Meanwhile, in other news, we see that the Pope Francis, and Patriarch Kirill of Moscow decided to get together in Cuba February 13th, 2016, a joint declaration of Pope Francis and Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and all Russia. And you can check this out at mospat.ru, mospat.ru /en/2016/02/13/news128178. You can read through the various points of their declaration here. And check out some of this other stuff, what their concluding remarks were. You know, watch the video of what they're doing there. Interesting things. On 12 February 2016, His Holiness Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and all Russia and His Holiness Pope Francis held meeting at Havana's Jose Marti International Airport. At the conclusion of the meeting, the primates of the Russian Orthodox and the Roman Catholic churches exchanged gifts. His Holiness Patriarch Kirill presented Pope Francis with a Kazan icon of the Mother of God and the Spanish edition of his book Freedom and Responsibility. Pope Francis presented Patriarch Kirill with a chalice, a reliquary with a particle of the holy relics of Saint Cyril, equal to the Apostles' heavenly patron of His Holiness, and the Russian translation of the encyclical Laudato Si. After that, His Holiness Patriarch Kirill and His Holiness Pope Francis proceeded to the hall to sign the joint declaration, and that's what we were just looking at a second ago. Among those present at the signing ceremony were Mr. Raul Castro Ruz, President of Cuba's Council of State and Council of Ministers, members of delegations of the Russian Orthodox and the Roman Catholic churches, and other officials. Commenting the meetings, His Holiness Patriarch Kirill said, "Your Holiness, Your Eminences, and Your Graces, Your Excellency, the head of the Republic of Cuba, dear brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, we spent 2 hours in an openly brotherly discussion with full understanding of our responsibility for our churches, for our faithful, and for the future of Christianity and human civilization. It was a very constructive conversation which gave us an opportunity to understand each other's positions. Now, I have to say, before I even looked into this, I remember hearing last year, the end of 2015, both the Queen of England as well as Pope Francis making mention that this would be the last Christmas, which, frankly, in my mind, would be fantastic. I'm really sick of the people slapping the holy on the profane and thinking God's happy with it. Now, I used to celebrate Christmas myself, but after doing all the research on it and realizing that it is absolutely pagan and has absolutely nothing to do with my Savior, I very quickly dropped that, as well as Ishtar Day. Those things have nothing to do with our Savior. If you really want to celebrate things related to our Savior, open your Bible to Leviticus 23 and check out the Moedim, or the appointed times, the feasts of Yahuwah. Those are the God-prescribed holidays, appointed times that He told us to celebrate, and we should stop with all this Christianizing paganism, because that is not a biblical concept. In fact, it violates Deuteronomy chapter 12. But I digress. So I don't know what the real meaning behind all that is. If they're just saying, if we don't stop all our hostilities, we'll be escalating into World War III, and there won't be any Christmas after that, or whatever. Or if they think that Nibiru or something is coming, and they know something that this year is their last year, where life as we know it will function. Whatever the case may be, but supposedly that was being said by both the Queen of England as well as the Pope this past December. And I remember reading something or hearing something that part of the reason why the Pope wanted to meet with Patriarch Kirill was that had something to do with the end of the world, or the end is near, or something like that. So he was sending out an urgent call to meet with this guy. So at any rate, they finally get together. They have some discussion here. He continues, the results of this meeting enable me to say that today our two churches can actively work together, protecting Christians all over the world, work together with full responsibility so that there would be no war, so that human life may be respected, basic principles of family, personal, and public morality may be strengthened, and through the church's involvement in the life of today's society, the most holy and blessed name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit may be glorified. When the ceremony was over, the members of the delegations were introduced to Pope Francis and Patriarch Kirill. After the meeting, Pope Francis left for Mexico. But where did Kirill go? Okay, so these guys get together, they chat and do their thing and sign this contract or whatever, this declaration. Pope goes to Mexico, but this guy goes down to Antarctica. So here's the article that was sent to me on February 18th, shortly after shortly after it was posted. Russia's top religious leader performs ancient ritual in Antarctica over Saudi Arabia's mysterious Ark of Gabriel, again by this same Sorcha Fa'al. In what we can only conclude is one of the most bizarre reports ever circulated in the Kremlin, the Ministry of Defense is reporting today that the global leader of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill of Moscow, arrived in Antarctica earlier today, where he joined up with the vast Federation naval armada transporting from Saudi Arabia the mysterious Ark of Gabriel, entrusted to Russia's care by the custodian of the two holy mosques, and performed an ancient ritual over it, read from a secret text given to him by Pope Francis just days prior in Cuba, when these leaders of Christianity's top two sects met for the first time in nearly 1,000 years. And so we got a picture of this guy hanging out with the penguins, checking them out. According to the report, which we had previously reported on in our 6 December 2015 report, which is what I had just read a few minutes ago, Russia begins transport of Saudi Arabia mysterious Ark of Gabriel to Antarctica. And I saw something interesting. Let me see if I can find it here in my history list. Okay, yeah. Check this out. Regarding his trip down there, I saw this video. The whole thing's in Russian, but they've got a transcript underneath it here. It says, head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill of Moscow and all Russia, spoke to the press in Sao Paulo in on Sunday, describing the moment his plane's windshield smashed mid-flight on the way to Russia's Bellingshausen Antarctic Station on Waterloo Island on February 17th. The patriarch said, "I learned about it probably the first. I was told at once that it was a very dangerous accident. The cockpit windshield glass literally shattered into small pieces. It was a duplex glass, and this first layer, which can withstand the greatest impact, it shattered into small pieces, and the pilot said that it was very dangerous and we must immediately return to Punta Arenas." He goes on, "Of course I agreed. I proposed to the pilot to fly at an altitude of 3,000 or 4,000 meters so that we were still alive in case of depressurization. When it happened, we were flying at an altitude of 9,000 meters, and there was a little chance we could get to the continent." He said, talking about the pilot, he said the pilot said that there was a guide in which the flight level cannot be changed dramatically in these conditions. If you noticed, we have been flying at a low altitude over virtually the entire Tierra del Fuego for a very long time. Could it be because of the shape of the dome, maybe? I don't know. Just saying. It's kind of weird. "We were at the height when, if the second window would have burst, it would not have led to serious consequences, but for the most part of the flight over the Drake Passage, we were flying at an altitude of 9,000 meters or 29,500 feet. Of course, this was a risky flight." So it's just kind of weird. They have this accident and they've got to stay at a certain altitude, lower altitude. Okay, back to the article here. According to this Ministry of Defense report, I've already read all this, so a lot of this is a repeat. This was already in the previous article. Upon his learning of the grave and global implications associated with this mysterious Ark of Gabriel, this report continues, Pope Francis contacted Patriarch Kirill, requesting an urgent and immediate meeting while warning that the end is near, after which Patriarch Kirill agreed to meet the Roman Catholic Church leader in Cuba on 12 February, an historic meeting between these two leaders that had not taken place between these churches' leaders in nearly 1,000 years. And so here we have Pope Francis and Patriarch Kirill meeting in Cuba, 12 February 2016. Though the exact nature of the talks between Patriarch Kirill and Pope Francis remain classified at much higher level than we're granted access to, Ministry of Defense analysts in this report do state that an ancient secret manuscript was given to Patriarch Kirill by Pope Francis that pertains to the Ark of Gabriel, whose legend behind it claims it was written directly by the Watchers, angels, described in the Book of Enoch. Now that's what really catches my attention. Because if it's talking about the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, when you read that book, most of the book deals with the Watchers of the 200 that landed at Mount Hermon in the days of Jared, that were the angels that sinned and left their first estate that Peter and Jude wrote about, who are bound in everlasting chains. The rest of the angels aren't bound in chains. Lucifer's not bound in chains. Satan, the devil, whatever you want to call him, he's not bound in chains. Neither are his fallen angels that are with him. They are the principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places that we wrestle against. We know that Satan goes about as a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. So, clearly he's out and about doing his thing. So who are these angels that are bound in chains that Peter and Jude are writing about? Well, there's no frame of reference for what they're talking about except for what we see in the Book of Enoch. These angels, the Watchers that landed at Mount Hermon in the days of Jared, 200 of them, mated with women and were judged by God and bound in chains and put in Tartarus. Well, if this artifact was, and if this story is real, and if any of this has any legitimacy to it at all, and they're saying that this is connected to the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, then this is pre-flood. This is a pre-flood technology that has apparently been discovered. So, again, cue the X-Files music here. And just hours ago, this report concludes, Patriarch Kirill, while using this secret text given to him by Pope Francis, performed an ancient ritual over the Ark of Gabriel in the Russian Orthodox Holy Trinity Church, the only church in Antarctica, and where immediately thereafter this mysterious artifact was transported into the vast interior of this cold and foreboding continent by a highly specialized Spetsnaz, Special Forces unit, to a destination and purpose not identified by the Ministry of Defense. Anybody that I've talked to or heard anything from, I've met a guy who was stationed down there working as a contractor for Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. Anybody I've had the opportunity to ask, I say, hey, have you or did you ever hear of anybody going further inland from the coast of Antarctica than 800 or 1,200 miles max? And so far, I haven't found anybody that's gone further than that, 800 to 1,200 miles. So what does that mean? I mean, if this article is true, and if this isn't just tabloid, nonsense, then an artifact potentially from the pre-flood world was brought to the interior, to a destination not identified by anybody, after the Pope meets with the Patriarch and he decides to go from Cuba to Antarctica, of all places. Strange days indeed. So I don't have a whole lot of time to really vet all this stuff. Something just kind of fell in my lap, so I figured I'd make a video of it and put it out there for you guys to look into, and of course post in the comments anything that you find, because it's rather interesting. At the very least, it's one of those things that make you go, Oh, I do want to read one more thing though. This is something I haven't talked about much, but in my book, Genesis and the Synchronized Biblically Endorsed Extra Biblical Text, it's a volume that has Genesis and the King James and Septuagint side by side like a parallel Bible, and then it has the full text of 1st Enoch, Joshua, and Jubilees, all in one volume. Of course, I talk a lot about Enoch as it pertains to the flat Earth, because Enoch is definitely slam dunk for the flat Earthers. You really don't get a whole lot in Joshua that would indicate that, but there is something that may be a clue, and that's in Joshua chapter 3. Joshua chapter 3 really goes into a great amount of detail describing what Enoch did to become so righteous and holy that God decided to take him home early, without dying. And let me see here. I'm going to begin Enoch chapter 3, starting in verse 30, and I'll read to the end of the chapter. It says, And Enoch then ordered a voice to be proclaimed, saying, Where is the man who delighteth to know the ways of the Lord his God? Let him come this day to Enoch before he is taken from us. And all the sons of men assembled and came to Enoch that day, and all the kings of the earth with their princes and counselors remained with him that day. And Enoch then taught the sons of men wisdom and knowledge, and gave them divine instruction, and he bade them serve the Lord and walk in his ways all the days of their lives. And he continued to make peace amongst them. And it was after this that he rose up and rode upon the horse, and he went forth, and all the sons of men went with him, about 800,000 men, and they went with him 1 day's journey. And the second day he said to them, Return home to your tents. Why will ye go? Perhaps ye may die. And some of them went from him, and those that remained went with him 6 days' journey. And Enoch said to them every day, Return to your tents, lest you may die. But they were not willing to return, and they went with him. And on the 6th day some of the men remained and clung to him, and they said to him, We will go with thee to the place where thou goest, as the Lord liveth, death only shall separate us. And they urged so much to go with him, that he ceased speaking to them, and they went after him and would not return. And when the kings returned, they caused a census to be taken, in order to know the number of remaining men that went with Enoch. And it was upon the 7th day that Enoch ascended into heaven in a whirlwind, with horses and chariots of fire. And on the 8th day all the kings that had been with Enoch sent to bring back the number of men that were with Enoch in that place from which he ascended into heaven. And all those kings went to the place, and they found the earth there filled with snow. And upon the snow were large stones of snow. And one said to the other, Come, let us break through the snow, and see, perhaps the men that remained with Enoch are dead, and are now under the stones of snow. And they searched, but could not find him. for he had ascended into heaven. Now, most people who study the pre-flood world would acknowledge that there was no rain on the earth before the flood. That was something new. Well, I mean, if that's true, then there was likely no snowfall on the earth either, so not due to precipitation. Which means if there was snow anywhere, could it be? I'm just speculating here. Most of the flat earthers out there who have been using the azimuthal equidistant map, and the map that's on the UN logo, they've all acknowledged, as have I, that there are problems with that map. That the continents don't work out right for flight times and things like that. So, okay, fine. But right now it's the only circular, the Bible says the circle of the earth. So that's what everybody's starting to work off of to try to figure out what a true map might be, if in fact we are on a circular plane. But just for the sake of argument, looking at the azimuthal equidistant map, the circular earth with the ice rim all the way around it, could that have been where these people ended up? Now, of course, in a pre-flood world, the continents wouldn't look like anything that we have today anyway. It was probably a lot different. In fact, there was probably quite a bit more land than there is now. So maybe there was a land bridge that could take you there. I don't know. It just seems rather, like I said, it's one of those things that make you go, Hey, like I said, this is a tinfoil hat X-Files. Could be pure fiction, could be tabloid nonsense. Then again, there could be something to it. So I will leave it to you guys to search and see if these things be true. Feel free to post your comments and findings below. And you know what? I think I'm going to make a section dedicated to weird stuff on the Testing the Globe website, because I have a feeling that there's plenty of other strange things just like this that need a home on my website, so I'll just have to create a whole link and a page dedicated to the weird, bizarre, strange type stuff. Maybe I'll call it the Flat Earth X-Files or something. We'll see. So if I do, I'll let you guys know about it. You can post any of your findings in the comment section on that page as well. All right, so there you go.